Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu einem kleinen Let's Play von mir und meinem Kanal Happy Fraction. Ich werde The Stanley Parable spielen, was eine sehr gute Bewertung bekommen hat. Und ich bin gespannt, ich habe es noch nicht gespielt. Und ich würde sehr gerne die Erfahrung mit euch teilen, weil ich habe gehört, es soll sehr besonders und gut sein. Dann fangen wir mal an.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
So, da wären wir. Man hat schon gemerkt, es ist besonders, das Spiel. Sehr besonders. Kleine Erwähnung noch, es ist ein Indie-Titel. Also, wenn jetzt das versucht, das Spiel zu spielen...
Stanley had never seen the office this brightly lit. Was it a sign of something? He hoped it was. He hoped very much that it was.
Wenn ihr versucht, das Spiel irgendwo zu suchen, ich hab's bei Steam. Bei Steam gekauft, Stanley Parable, weiß ich glaube gut 12, 13 Euro gut angelegtes Geld. Wurde mir empfohlen. Ich hoffe, es ist auch so. Wenn nicht... Ja, 13 Euro, ne? So, ich geh mal weiter. Aber... Jetzt hätte er jetzt mal Spaß. Ja, ich mag schon, das Spiel ist nicht normal. Merkwürdig.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Gehen wir links lang? Ich weiß nicht. Also ich bin echt dazu geneigt, rechts lang zu gehen, aber nur aus Prinzip. Ach, Schnee, komm. Machen wir ordentlich. Ich laufe den Flug entlang und es läuft Musik. Nicht.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Okay. Tanya. To do. Shift Globe. One. Free to play. Sollen wir lang? Ich glaube nicht. Ach so,
Stanley stepped into the broom closet, but there was nothing here, so he turned around and got back on track.
Irgendwas machen?
There was nothing here. No choice to make, no path to follow, just an empty broom closet. No reason to still be here.
Hier kann man echt nichts lesen.
It was baffling that Stanley was still just sitting in the broom closet. He wasn't even doing anything. At least if there was something to interact with, he'd be justified in some way. As it is, he's literally just standing there doing sweet FA.
Na komm, wir gehen mal raus.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Hübsch. Hübsch, hübsch, hübsch. So großig ist es schon. Ich mag das ja nicht. So ist hier egal. Können wir lang? Okay, wir sollen da schon raus. Okay.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What dark secret was being held from him? What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number, 2845. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
Will der mir? Ey, das ist ja cool, Alter. Nee, kann ich natürlich nicht wissen.
Yet incredibly, by simply pushing random buttons on the keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck. Amazing. He stepped into the newly opened passageway.
Ich will da nicht runter. Ja, können wir wieder zurück. Sicher ist ja schon. Okay, schade. So, gehen wir mal runter. Oh, schön. Loading, loading, loading. It's loading, loading, loading. Oh,
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now, when for years it had never occurred to him? This question would not go unanswered for long.
Ist echt cool ist es ja doch. Ne?
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Nicht im Ernst mit Wachsmal gerade, oder? Oh, nicht im Ernst. Und da steht mein... Boah, das sieht ein bisschen creepy aus, aber ich scheiß drauf. YOLO.
Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley would meet his violent death.
Von mir aus.
The door behind him was not shut. Stanley still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track. At this point, Stanley was making a conscious, concerted effort to walk forward and willingly confront his death.
Scheiße. Alter, sieht das gruselig aus. YOLO. Aber ich hoffe, jetzt habe ich nicht falsch gemacht. Beziehungsweise verkackt. LOL. No.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley was inched closer and closer to his demise, he reflected that his life had been of no consequence whatsoever. Stanley can't see the bigger picture. He doesn't know the real story, trapped forever in his narrow vision of what this really is. Perhaps his death was of no great loss, like plucking the eyeballs from a blind man. So he resigned and willingly accepted this violent end to his brief and shallow life. Farewell, Stanley.
What?
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley was led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws.
What?
In a single visceral instant, Stanley was obliterated as the machine crushed every bone in his body, killing him instantly.
What? Okay. Ich muss mal sagen, das war jetzt... Nee. Okay, ich würde mal sagen, wir machen hier einen Cut und wir sehen uns in der nächsten Folge. Haut rein, tschüss!